Hi everyone, my name's Matthew Benjamin, aka Bushwacka, DJ producer, recovered addict and now psychotherapeutic counsellor, and quite honoured to have been asked to come in and do a little chat up here today about the emergence of sobriety in dance music and some of the connotations of that. But before we get into any of that, I'm just going to allow the other panellists to introduce themselves, starting with you, Belinda.
Hi, my name's Belinda. I'm coming from the position of being a raver. I've been sober for 10 years now and still go out all the time. And I can share on what helped me in my journey, which is really meditation and also just becoming more self-confident about sharing my choices with going out. I love going out and just feeling the vibration of the music and enjoying that above anything else. And I now work mentoring a variety of people, but often a lot of DJs who especially are emerging into the scene, and they're really tuning into their own choices about if they want to be sober when they're DJing. So I'm really about empowering people in their choice if they want to be sober going out in the scene.
I'm Lee, local lad from Liverpool. Swept away by the rave scene, 88, 89, up and down the country, taking ecstasy, which led to cocaine, which my use led to abuse, which led to a really painful addiction for 27 years. 4.5 years ago, I had my last drink and my last drug, and now I've started a support group in Liverpool called Break Free, which we're actively helping people who have got drink and drug problems. We do walks every Saturday morning, we do group meetings every Wednesday, and we do gym sessions every Monday. We've now become a CIC, we're looking for funding to take it a little bit further, and I'm hugely passionate not only about showing people the tools that I learned and being brutally honest and open about the painful side of addiction, but also showcasing the incredible, unbelievable rewards that come with not drinking and taking drugs, and showing people the hope that there is so many incredible rewards that come with not drinking and not taking drugs, and that you can go out, live your life. You won't be boring, you won't be antisocial, you will be able to go where you want, but you will go there and you will thoroughly enjoy it instead of being in a pit of pain and doom and gloom that follows that use and abuse. And once you can break that cycle, you will see that and you will feel that and you won't go back, and you can.
I'm Brett. Well, I was a drummer, and then I went into management, and I was using drink and drugs and all the drugs really. I'd had a very abusive childhood, and I just hid it, never spoke about it, and I think I used all of that to mask the pain. And over the last decade, I've unpicked those experiences and understood my extreme behaviour and tried to find, a place of peace where I can have a glass of wine and the odd smoke and not be extreme, and realise how the pain of my life tied in with my behaviour and my reactionary behaviour. So I'm kind of here to represent that side. But again, looking at going out and not going out to get high, going out for other reasons, for the music and the connection to other people, and being excited to just be around people and music without thinking that I need to go and get loaded.
Thanks everyone. So we're not going to make this about 1988 per se, as there's a lot of younger people that have shared a huge interest in the emergence of sobriety, but there's at least two of us up here who have come from that era, and back then it was just standard that nobody was really sober. A lot of people didn't drink, but everyone was taking drugs. Now lots changed over the last couple of decades, over the last decade particularly, and I'd like to kind of open up the conversation up here as to how things have changed from years ago when it was just the norm for everybody to be getting on it to now where sobriety is becoming more commonplace, not just in sober raves, which is a whole movement itself, but even younger people, mid-20s and younger, the demographic of how many of them drink anymore is started to change a lot. I think a few years ago the statistics were something like 20% of young people are not actually drinking when they go out now. I'd be really interested to hear how you think it's changed. Maybe, Belinda, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm seeing this a lot with the younger generation. As I said, I'm working with some DJs that are like under 30 and they seem to be so much more, I don't know, like health conscious, or it's just a different energy to what we had before. But just leaning it back to having that choice, I think, like you said before, whether it was 1988 or even the year 2000, it was just like so synonymous that if you're at a rave, like you had to take something. And now, I don't know, there's a different type of consciousness emerging almost, where people are really interested in still using music for entertainment and fun, but they're not necessarily wanting to get super unconscious with drugs. They're wanting to like really enjoy the music. So, I mean, and me from my personal experience, like 10 years ago, if people came up to me when I was at a rave and, you know, asked me if I wanted anything and I said I was sober, they just couldn't believe it. Whereas today it's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, no problem, and they'll kind of leave me alone. So I feel it's much easier now. It's still not easy, but there is a lot more acceptance and visibility around that people might want to be sober, and not just because they're an addict, just out of choice.
What's your take on that, Lee? You're obviously very active in a lot of different areas, but whether it's performing or whether holding space for people, what's your experience of how things have changed now?
I think it's a tough one. I think there's a lot more younger people and older people now who really want to either younger people who want to be more important for that they're healthy and they're ambitious and creative and they're into the music and they're producing, or these people that that young DJs that you're helping along the way. I still think there's a really big stigma with them people feeling comfortable in this industry of openly saying, I don't drink. And the shock of that is still there. I personally, it's getting better through things like this, through people being open and honest and saying, look, it's absolutely fine. What I struggle with is why it should be any sort of different reaction if you say you don't drink than if you do. Why should that get a reaction of like, fucking don't you? Fucking what's up with you? That's still there. And that's why lots of people either won't talk about it, they just try and not drink, but then the pressure's still there around them, but inside they don't want to do that. And I think that's the bit that needs addressing, because if people, I'm 4.5 years since I had a drink, and I will fucking scream it from the rooftops about how proud I am that I don't drink. Because look what it's brought me. It's brought me so many unbelievable rewards that, and I say this to people that are in my groups, I say like, be proud of the fact that why shouldn't you be? But there's still that little bit of, like, as you said earlier on when I was talking to you, there's still that little bit of like, oh, you come on, what's up with you? Have a drink, you're not drinking. You don't drink. I don't understand why that should be there. That's just the way it is. And I think the more of this that goes on, the more people will go, you know what? It's not abnormal not to drink. It's very, very normal. Why should it be classed as and feel like? And I still get it. I'm out at my gigs all the time, and people that don't know that are at my gigs who have been brought up with me, either listening to me on the radio or coming to my gigs over the years in clubs, go to me. And the thing is nowadays, as you said, it's not just clubland, festivals. People are drinking and using everywhere. Let's be brutally honest about it. Weddings, funerals, football games, boxing events, live music, concerts, christenings. You could go to the toilet, it's not even hidden anymore. Years ago, when you go, and if someone was using cocaine, you would probably go to the toilet and shut the door. Now you can walk into a cubicles in a lad's gents toilet and they're just standing there with it out, having a line in there. So I think it's actually harder to not see it right in your face, and I just wish more people would feel comfortable with being really proud of the fact that they don't drink, because it's not abnormal. There is still that element of that.
I think there's always peer pressure, but in the last few years, people like yourselves as role models, DJ Fat Tony, like there's a lot of really high-level DJs who are flying the flag for sobriety. So like looking at the last like 20 years, I think they're really helping. And then the peer pressure thing, I think, has been around since the beginning of time, and that's part of our inner journey and our inner path of like, well, what's right for me, and am I hanging around the right people? There are people that go out, like if they're real friends, they're not going to be pushing things on
Absolutely, spot on, yeah.
And it really has changed a lot. I mean, when I was DJing a lot in my 20s, if I wasn't high, people would think there was something wrong with me, whereas these days with social media and the amount of focus there is on the event not just being in the moment but being recorded, there seems to be a lot more awareness around how people that are performing might be perceived and seen. But I'm just thinking, this isn't a suggestion that every single person that goes out should stay sober. That there are a lot of people that are okay to have a few drinks, that want to go and party, that want to go and do whatever they're doing. They're not all like, going to end up in the same place. And it's really about what we're curious here about is the stigma attached to going out sober, but also when people are struggling and when we see them struggling, what is happening there? What's happening to us? Are we able to talk to them about it? Or if we're not talking to them about it, or no one's saying anything, we need to start questioning why no one's saying anything. And I think that's a really important area to explore. I know people that have had fatal consequences recently, and there have been other people that haven't said anything and have known what's going on. It's not our responsibility to save somebody else, but if we know that someone's struggling, what's going on? So what are the signs? What are the signs that somebody might be going a little bit too far down that rabbit hole, or might be in trouble, Brett?
So a point of reference, just to kind of link that and what we was talking about before, which is before I did a year of sobriety, because I realised that since the age of like 14, I'd never ever been sober for any period of time. And what does that even feel like? And if I just say I'll do it for a couple of months and then I've got that big event coming up and I'm going to get smashed, then I'm never going to get into that zone where I've had to be in all those places, the clubs, the funeral, the wedding, all of those over that year period, so that I could really sort of understand how I am, who I am when I'm not using, to distract from not being comfortable with my thoughts or who I am in that moment. And so then, to move on to what you were just saying, Matthew, about, then you've got a point of reference for my own behaviour and what that looks like, and what I'd have that moment of like, I'd really love to go and get a drink now. Because I've got all these thoughts in my head that I'm inadequate and I'm not okay right now, so I'm going to go, I'm not doing that. I've promised myself this time. But then it's easier to see when you've got a mate who's displaying behaviour that you've done yourself. And also, I mean, the question for me is, if you're in that and you're one of those people, how can you then start to think of intervening in someone else's behaviour? Because you're actually, you might be sober for a few weeks and then you see someone going home and you know that they're going to go home and get loaded on their own and lock themselves away, but not really in a great position to call that behaviour out, because they know that you were off to the dealer 3 weeks ago or whatever. So that there's that going on. But then in terms of, we were talking about it before, is like, if you notice that, maybe it's going to bring in professionals, you know, and trying to go down that route of seeking help to outside rather than necessarily us getting involved in it. It's very difficult.
I think this is the most important part of it. People know they can go to AA, people know they can go to Addiction, people know they can go to Sharp Recovery, people know they go to people know there's support out there. I know from people that, since I opened up 4 years ago, totally publicly across my socials, all I'm doing on my social networks is telling the truth. Nothing else. No magic to it. It's just me talking about where I was, and them signs that Matthew talked about. All I did in my early part of when I was opening up and talking honestly about it was talking about the painful things that it was taking off me, the paranoia, the sitting in the house on my own, thinking the police are in my garden, not going to work, losing my wife, couldn't see my kids, bad mental health, losing my health and my wealth, and they are the signs. Totally antisocial. You know, if we were out and we were together and then someone would come across and we'd make plans for the night, yeah, we're going to do this, and you're on the guest list here and Matt's playing here, and yeah, I can't wait, I could go to the toilet, someone will give me a line of cocaine, by the time I'm back here, I'm not going any of them places that you've just mentioned, I'm going home. It's just hugely antisocial, and I think they're the signs, but having people openly talking about it. And I think one of the difficulties for people that reach out to me is if it's a mum, for example, a mum, because it doesn't just affect guys. And if a mum reaches out, she's scared to go to the doctors, she's scared to go to Addiction because they think social services are going to get involved and she's going to take kids took off her, so she suffers and not says nothing. And I see that a lot, and I think having more support and open groups where people feel like they can reach out to Matthew and he will understand and he won't judge and there won't be consequences, having that first port of call for people to just talk for the first time, that first time of reaching out is vital. And I don't think there's enough places where people think there are safe places that they can talk to people like you, like Matt, like me, who are just normal people, not doctors. Just, I can reach out to Matthew and say, Matt, you know what, listen to your story and that resonates with me, that's me, this is going on. What a breaking point that is for some people, because that's the hardest bit. But they're scared to go to lots of these services because of the consequences they think will come with that, with the kids, with the job. What if the work finds out? I'll lose my job, I'm not saying nothing. What if they take the kids off me and have to go to social services? I'm not going to say nothing. That is happening.
Yeah, I think this community support's really important. And in my own experience, when I was like really raving a lot and using drugs every day, like it was actually my boss. I turned up to work, I was working in investment banking and I couldn't even remember my password. I was just so scrambled from the weekend. And she pulled me aside and she's like, you know, what's going on with you? You're a really smart young woman and this is getting out of control. And even though I knew that deep down inside, like, I'm not on the same level of, we're all on different levels, but I didn't go through the same level of addiction as you guys, but having someone look out for me, that kind of was like, okay, I really need to sort my shit out. This is not healthy anymore, and that was like one turning point for me. So what I'm sharing there is it didn't come from my group of raving friends, because we were all in it, and when you're in it, you just think that's normal. It's normal that you're going to work wasted. But sometimes, I don't know, I guess it's following your intuition of just like, I'm just going to say something to this person, whether they take it on board or not, that's up to them. But I feel like I've done a bit of my duty of care.
That's the thing, is that you can't change someone else's behaviour, but you can ask questions and make them think whether they might think differently about it. You know, and actually I think questions is possibly the way, like, you know, how is this working out for you? How are you doing? You know, but really sincerely and inquisitively without judgment, I think, is really helpful. Because I know if I felt like someone was telling me to stop, it would make me go, oh, fuck off, I'm off, you know, so yeah.
The emergence of sobriety in terms of a mindset around going out and the kind of, you know, the parties are no fun without drinking drugs, is that a myth or is that a reality? And how do we change our mindset towards that? You know, people are going to, as Lee's already mentioned, people are going to be taking drugs whether they're at a party or a funeral, you know, if that's what they've decided they're going to do. But, you know, how do we change the mindset around going out?
It's one of the most important points for me, because when I was in and out of services, whether it was addiction, whether I was in CA, the steps, whatever form of recovery I was in at the time, the one biggest battle I had was that I'm not going to have no social life if I stop. And I now realise that was my addiction, talking to me, so that I didn't stop. And once I realised that, I think how you change people's attitudes towards that is in your actions and openly talking about it. I know how much I struggled with that thought. My addiction had me by the balls with telling me, you won't be able to do your gigs anymore, you'll have to find a different job, you won't be able to enjoy it when you're DJing, you know, you won't be able to go away with your missus. What about when you go on holiday? Because my addiction had, I call it a hard drive of memories. My addiction had a full hard drive, 30 terabyte hard drive of memories, and on there, on its hard drive, is me using in all different situations. So when I made that decision to stop, my addiction would go, well, you can't go there, and there, because there's a big list of the things that you, and places you used to use in. And if the way my addiction was, I used everywhere. Clubs, bars, restaurants, weddings, funerals. So it went, right, can't do none of them no more. And it's wrong. I'm so passionate about that. Not only in my words, but in my actions. People only have to look across my social networks and see how much I enjoy my work, I enjoy my family, I've got my family back, I've got my job, I've launched a radio station, my festival's doing amazing, I've got a Raving Fit brand, all these things. I had these ideas for years, never fitting well enough to act on them. And life starts when you stop. It really does. And all your creative and ambitions and all that stuff you will start to reap the rewards from. And I think how you get that message across to people is showing them and giving them a platform to reach out comfortably and go, I love what I'm seeing you do. I'm seeing the rewards. Look how well you're doing. Look at the rewards you're getting. I was under the impression if you stop drinking, you don't do any of them things. But fuck me, you're doing them. You can. And you can.
Is there this myth that, you know, drugs make you really creative, and without that, and it's just such a myth, isn't it? Because it actually, you know, you might have those moments, and then you've got days and weeks of that going on. And it just actually, like you said, you've got all these ideas, you're really creative, but you're not doing any of them because you haven't got any energy.
I can still remember, and the key for me, being totally at peace now with knowing that I'll never drink or take a drug again in my life, is the fact that I'll never forget. I don't carry the pain round like an open wound with me. I have it in a box, and whenever I need to open that box and get my list out of all the chaos and pain and carnage and lying, manipulating that I did, I've always got it there. Because if I look at my gigs now to the way I was, when I was drinking and using and I would go to work, I would be dreading going. Wouldn't want to leave the house. I was using in the house usually and drinking. I would go there, couldn't drive, get a lift, sit outside for 10 or 15 minutes, plucking the courage up to go into a club which has got 1,000, 2,000 people in, and I've been snorting cocaine and I'm paranoid. I don't want to look at them. I'm going in the back door, I'm sitting backstage, still using, going on stage, playing an hour set, not looking at the crowd, not creative, not risking anything on the decks, playing mega safe songs because my creativity's gone, can't look at them, play my last song, straight home, straight into the house to get more. That was my night. Now, I will interact with every single person there and be creative, what can I play, looking at the crowd, judging them, feeling them. I wonder would I get away with that? Oh, you know what, I'll risk it. Come on. And enjoying it now.
Yeah, I think mindset is everything, and the leading by example, as you said, Lee. So like in our society, we're conditioned that all this fun and ecstasy either comes from a pill or comes from outside of us. So a big part of my journey was with meditation. In some of those experiences, I was feeling so much more ecstasy than I had from any pill, and I'm so glad I've got the reference point. But I learnt that it doesn't come from outside, it really does come from within us. And like when I go out dancing, if I'm using some of my meditation practices and I'm really in bliss, like people honestly come up and they're like, what have you taken? I want some. And I'm like, honestly, I'm sober, like I'm just, so what we say in the meditation world is that the drugs are the back door to get to that place of ecstasy. And when we're really connected to our spirit and our being, we're just, you've got the front row seat, it's right there. So this is something I'm really passionate about. I've written a whole course about it.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I love the way you spoke
Ecstasy
about
Now,
that.
and
It's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, it's about really experiencing that inner ecstasy, and then I take that with me when I go out dancing, and I've just got an endless supply of feeling good. Yeah, and that's a mindset. It doesn't come from outside, it comes from within.
Just, Matthew, before you, that question about how do we, if someone's not all right, and how do we deal with that? And I realised that I was using drugs to hide a lot of pain that was secret pain, that I didn't talk about. And I realised no one ever asked me if, I was hiding something, if I was okay, because they might see me, oh, Brett, he's mad, isn't he? He's the one that sucked for 3 days, and, any good value, that kind of thing. And he's just off on one. And no one ever just went, Brett, is there a reason why you use so many drugs and you're up 2 days after everyone else has gone to bed? No one ever, and that's a really interesting, if you see someone that's doing that, maybe you can be inquisitive about what was your life like before I knew you, or,
I mean, the tricky thing about that is that often those environments that you're in, other people are intoxicated as well, and so you just blend in, they're not going to notice it. I mean, back in the day, what used to happen to me, to my detriment, was people would come up and say, oh, you look really well. And I'd been up for like 4 days, but I just looked really well, and I used to think, well, if I didn't look really well, that would have done me a favour, because I'd have probably realised I had a problem a lot earlier. But just kind of leading on from that, before we kind of open it up to any questions from the audience, on coping strategies for when one does go out and feels uncomfortable, or there is peer pressure going on. I mean, I'll start off with a couple of things that really helped me when I was still going out a lot. Okay, DJing is by the by, because when you're playing, but when you're off the decks, or if you're just out and you're in that space and it's getting messy and you're not comfortable, what do you do? For me, I made myself a rule, which was that if I found myself kind of aimlessly just kind of standing around for like more than 15 minutes thinking, what am I doing here? Instead of staying longer and longer until I just ended up breaking my own rules and getting on it, I would just get out of there, get a taxi, go back to a hotel, go home, whatever. So that really, really helped me. I'd be like, right, that's it, I'm going, I don't need to say goodbye to anyone, I'm just leaving. And then the other thing was, which we all know, when someone offers you a drink or wants to know why you're not drinking, like, do you want to drink? No, like, how do you deal with that? And something that did help for me was I used to say, well, I'm allergic to it, and that could stop the conversation there and then, but then it can, sometimes it would go in a different direction, and they say, oh, why? What happens to you? And I'd say, well, if I drink, I go fucking mental, and then they'd leave me alone.
I think the problem for me, and I have this a lot in our support groups, what you're saying now is one of the highest up of the topics for people when they come in, when they're starting in their recovery, is putting the people around them straight. And using I'm on antibiotics, or I've got a meeting in the morning at 8 o'clock, or the kids have got footy at 7:30, I'm not drinking tonight, or I'm allergic to it, is a good get out of jail card, but you can't keep saying it all the time. And I learned every time I gave an excuse, it sent a signal to my addiction that I wasn't comfortable telling them. So when I started getting brutally honest, when people started saying to me, "Are you having a drink, Lee?" Or "I've got a little thingy there, do you want one of them?" I just tell them the truth. And the difference that made was phenomenal, because it sent a signal to my addiction. I'm not fucking messing. I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying I'm on antibiotics. I'm not saying I've got to be up in the morning with the kids. I'm telling you the truth. And it doesn't, your addiction will make out it has to be a fucking 16-page letter and a fucking 3.5-hour speech. Oh, what am I going to say to them? Fucking hell. Dead simple. Say to you, "Do you want to drink?" "No." "How come? Why come you not drinking?" I've decided to stop and make so much happier and healthier now I don't drink. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was just bringing me loads of pain, so I don't drink. 5 seconds, that's just took me. And that's the truth.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I also believe for some people that when they say they're allergic to it, that's just as much of a truth for them, because
Yeah, good point.
if they put it
Think of it
inside
that way.
themselves, they don't know when they're going to stop, you know.
Yeah, didn't think of that angle on it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think if you're kind of like playing with sobriety, sometimes just thinking, how do I want to feel tomorrow, is always a good one to tune into yourself. But the most important thing is, I feel like what Lee was just speaking to about, I call it like self-abandonment. Like, am I going to abandon myself and my truth and my decisions for someone else and keep giving my power away? Because over time that really eats you away inside. And this is an opportunity to, just be who you are. Just say, this is my decision, I feel good, I feel comfortable with this. And over time you start to feel stronger. And that has ripple effects on your whole life with everything you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the longer you stay free from drinking drugs, the more rewards you will get. And the more rewards you get, you will come out of that box of pain you were living in, full of that list of paranoia, pain, not going to work, losing your job, losing your partner, losing your family, all this stuff. Once your new box fills up with all the amazing rewards, that when this does try to chat to you, go on, you're doing well now, it's 4 months, just have a little drink, you haven't been out, you work hard, fucking hell, the fight's on, the match is on, it's here 21st, the girls are all going, and it tries it. You are under no illusion, you would never give these rewards back to swap that box back, and you get stronger as you get more honest, you get the rewards. But what Matt was saying about them moments when you are out, how do you cope with them moments if you are out and you're thinking, you're saying if you found yourself wandering around for a bit, you would know, go on. For me, if you go out with the mindset of, right, it's a 40th tonight, I'm in recovery, I'm a month, 2 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, 6 months, 12 months, whatever you are, and you're going, and you can feel that little bit of uncomfortableness that is with, well, I'm going here, I know people are going to be drinking, I know they're going to be using, I am going into a nightclub, and this could be, in the past, my addiction's got footage of me using in this environment, so there's a high chance that I'm going to start. I would, as soon as I started, I'd go out with the positive mindset, I'm going to enjoy it, the music's on, I have my favourite DJs on, I can't wait to hear them, I'm going to have a great conversation with my mates, being totally sober and sane and normal, being me, the real me, full of personality, not like being a recluse in the corner, not want to speak to no one, switching away, paranoid like a weirdo. I'm going to be me and enjoy this. If at any point that plan ended up being a debate, I'd go on at the start of recovery. If it was a debate, because it's a plan at the start, and if at some point during that night you go, but I could just fucking have one, or I'm in the car but I could have two. Debate, change your plan, go home, because as soon as you enter the debate with it and it starts offering you a deal and you debate it, that's when it gets really, really difficult.
There's an extra for me. When I was using drugs, a lot of it I realised was to actually switch off my conscious mind. So the naggy little you're not good enough, all that sort of stuff. So that I could get into a state where I was actually quite present if I got the mix right. So I realised that, and this is a massive subject, but worth looking at, you know, the nature of thought and what our thoughts do to us, and how, you know, if I'm not feeling all right now, how can I just focus on what's going on? If I feel inadequate right now, and I just start listening to what Lee's saying and try and be here and not be in here, you know, and I think a lot of our using drugs is about being way too much in here, about, like you were talking about the voices, right? That you've got, the voice that tries to convince you to go and score is the same voice that tells you you're not good enough, you're going to mess up tonight, I'll go and use some drugs to switch that off. And actually there's a lot of work that we can do about just remembering I'm here right now talking to these guys and you guys, you know, and just trying to be as here as possible. And it's a practice, you know, and it's really fucking hard, but it's worth thinking about, not thinking so much about what might happen over there, or, you know, being more present.
That's great. Would anybody in the audience have any questions for anybody up here? You're welcome to.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned about being able to get on stage and then perform. Previously, you take drugs before that. What are the coping mechanisms have you got, apart from telling yourself you're going to enjoy this, for example? I mean, I played this afternoon just up the road, just for an hour. Really looking forward to it until this morning, and I always get this every time I play out. Then I start getting that anxiety, and I'm usually like, beers and fight. What kind of coping mechanisms or strategies have you got in place to potentially help that?
None, because I've accepted I'll never drink or use again. I don't have any battle at all now, and that's
Alternatives, I mean.
a long time ago. Like when I started out on the recovery, and bear in mind, I've speaking to Matty before, I was in and out of services for 12 or 13 years. This didn't just go, I've had enough, I'm stopping. And my beast, my addiction's just gone, okay, I'll sit over here and play Connect 4 and fucking play Scrabble and watch songs of praise and leave it alone. It's not. It's been getting its own way for 27 years. It's used. It knows. That's why I talk about the hard drive. It knows, hang on, I've been here before and I've said this to him and he uses. So we'll keep asking. But what it asks for and what it gets are two different things. At the start of my recovery, I had a plan. And I also made, the technique I used was very different. It was about recognising your addiction, becoming aware of the beast of your addiction, talking to you, generating them feelings you're talking about, the anxiety, that's the beast. Oh, go on here, and it will try and use them things. But I at the start, had a plan. Because unlike you, if you work in this industry, or like Matty's a DJ, and was DJing in that environment, you can't just pack your job in. It's what you love, but it will convince you that. And you're passionate about it, but I made a list, and on that list, it's the most brutally honest list I've ever wrote in my life. I even got my wife to write on my list of all the pain and carnage and things I've lost, and relationships I've broke, and lies and everything, and how I was in work. And I just made sure I carried that list with me when I was first going out. And if ever I had addictive thoughts of using, I went, here's the evidence. This is where it goes.
I mean, when I used to DJ with Leo, and I was in sobriety, and he wasn't. He couldn't go on stage without having a drink first. He would have to have a couple of drinks first. He'd ask me to play first so he could just relax a little bit. It depends what your goal is. Like, are you wanting to achieve long-term sobriety, or are you wanting to deal with your pre-performance nerves? And it's really about accepting the feeling, and how can you transform that anxious feeling into excitement and enjoy being excited and just enjoy that sensation, and retrain yourself to go, I feel like this because I'm excited.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, anxiety is normal for us, and unfortunately sometimes in society we get told, oh, this isn't a good emotion, we have to push that away. And we do have techniques, even like breath work. When we belly breathe, it actually puts your nervous system in a different state, and it's so simple, but honestly I work with this a lot with people when they have anxiety. It switches your nervous system to the rest and digest rather than this fight flight. So part of it, I think, is like accepting, like, I've got a gig. Like, of course, I'm a bit anxious and excited, and just breathing in and just trying to come to yourself with a bit of compassion as well.
Can I just ask you, honestly, you don't have to say, is it anxiety and excitement about the gig, or is it slight fear of doing the gig and knowing that there's a chance you could drink and use?
So the former, but normally it's that fear of fucking up in the first couple of tracks. Once that's gone, it's absolutely
Right.
It's always the same first 2-3 tracks in.
Cool.
The breathing thing is massive, isn't it? It's like the thing that we never... I never had that conversation about, it's the one thing that we do from birth to death. And we never, exploring, just remembering to spend 5 minutes breathing before you go on instead of 5 minutes drinking a bottle of beer. But that exploring that as a subject is another biggie.
Some great ones. They're going to be out on Deliciously Ella's app. It's just because that's really readily available. That are all just 10-minute mindfulness, just feeling the hands, breathing with the belly, and they honestly help a lot.
You had a question? So what are you asking?
Couldn't quite hear you, sorry. Just speak up a little bit.
A cultural thing in the UK that you have to get smashed when you DJ? Was that what, and in other countries you feel?
Locally in Liverpool or in the UK? Good question. Very good question.
It depends where you go. I mean, some countries or some cities a lot more than others. But yes, there is a huge cultural thing here about drinking.
I've lived in a lot of countries as a raver, and I think it's part of that the culture of the scene. Like whether I'm in Australia or Berlin or Bali or South America or here, I feel it hasn't been that much different. That's just my experience.
I think, you're right, there are now more people that are actively quite proud of the fact that they're sober. I know lots of my DJ friends that are now sober. Some of the younger DJs that are coming through are more focused on a career than they are about smashing the ale in and getting absolutely wrecked all weekend. So I think
the hard thing for artists though, like I was just talking to people backstage at a festival, is when you've got 5 gigs in a row and as the performer they want you to be like, hey, the life of the party, and it's really hard to do that sober because you're really tired after not sleeping for 5 nights.
You're right. The problem I had with that is that I couldn't drink without using. That's why I had to stop drinking and taking cocaine, because as soon as I drunk, so if I did have 4 or 5 gigs in a row and I go to the first one and go, I've got fucking loads of gigs tonight, go on. I wouldn't just go, I'll have a bottle of lager and then I'll have another one at my next gig. I would go, gives a bottle of lager, gives another bottle of lager, I'll have a double vodka and lemonade. Who's got shots? Give us them shots. Who's got gear? Wallop. And I'd be snorting cocaine at the first gig. And then I wouldn't want to go to the second one because I'd just be on what Matthew spoke about. Shit, I'm not comfortable here. I'm weird, I'm wired, I'm paranoid, I'm uncomfortable. I'm dreading my next 4 gigs. Now I've learned that I can soak up all my gigs now and thoroughly enjoy them, being me. I've got a big personality anyway. If people want to come and enjoy the gig and come and enjoy me, I'm there and present for them. They're getting me at the gig and not a weird, paranoid, uncomfortable person who doesn't want to speak to no one.
I think the culture I notice here, and it does happen everywhere, is the people pleasing a lot more, which is like what we were saying before. If someone asks for, like, go on, have a drink, people here find it really hard to say no. There's this deep people pleasing, and it is just coming back to like saying what feels right for us. So I think that's part of the culture, and then that seeps not only into drinking but work and everything else.
Yeah, and I think this isn't really only about people that have got massive drink and drug problems either. There are plenty of people that will have a couple of drinks quite happily, but that maybe they just don't want the peer pressure of going out and being forced into having a drink. And you know, I think it is really important to acknowledge that there is a huge shift towards more sober social events now, and that's happening. I'm noticing it in gigs that yeah, some people are just doing what they've always done or whatever they want to do, but you know, a lot of people are all right with it now. That you know, that whereas before the stigma was, oh well, I can't really tell anyone I'm not drinking, or I need to pretend I'm drinking to be able to fit in. It's getting a bit better now, and these conversations are kind of designed to like bring that to the surface. Is there any more questions before? Well, I've got a huge amount of experience of relapsing, so I can talk a lot about that. I was in and out of recovery for over 10 years, and sometimes I'd last 2 hours and sometimes I'd last a year, 18 months even. I think it's really important to be non-judgmental with somebody that if that happens to them, they already feel bad enough as it is. They don't need to be made to feel more bad. There are consequences. We talk about something that you may have heard before. We talk about in the beginning there was partying, and then it became partying with consequences, and eventually it became just consequences. And the relapse is the consequences, and it happens, and those consequences will be that it will affect people around them, often family, relationships, work, finances, whatever it might be. But in terms of supporting somebody that might relapse, it's get them back into recovery as quickly as possible and help them through that.
It's a tough one with relapses because, like Matty, I was the same. I'd go 6 months, 9 months, 15 months before now and relapsed, and every time I relapsed it was down to the drink. My addiction would convince me I could still drink and not use drugs. But what I learned, I think a relapse, it's a tough one, Matt, because you don't want to promote a relapse. You don't want to sit here and go, yeah, you've got a relapse, because you haven't. You haven't got a relapse. I don't think it's a signal we should say, yeah, everyone's got a relapse. I know people who've got into recovery and nailed it first time, but I think if you can learn from it, that was one of the most valuable things, was what Matt said, is getting back in to recovery straight away and learning why. There's usually some things that I didn't have right. I had doors that were open, people I hadn't put straight, still little bits and bobs that were going on around me that led to my lapse, and every time I lapsed, I shut more of them, until in the end, they were all closed.
Do you have a question? What I do know is that there are lots of different ways to skin a cat. I mean, I only know the ways that work for me, but I know lots of other ways that work for other people. I wonder if you've got something specific in mind that has taken your interest in terms of that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, on the journey, if you come across something that is a bit different,
Regards recovery,
yeah.
regards tools to use, yeah, like different forms of recovery. I did a completely different form of recovery than what's mostly standard in what people think of AA or the steps or addiction. I was an American guy called Jack Trimpe who does something called AVRT. It's called rational recovery, and it's called AVRT, addictive voice recognition technique. And you might have heard the bits I was saying tonight about that voice that you end up, people call them cravens, people call them, I'm itching all weekend, oh, I'm rattling, I'm climbing the walls. All that's going on there is you're arguing with your addiction. It's saying to you, go on, you've done well, it's 4 weeks now, you've learned, just have a little drink with the girls, go on, go on, go on. And there's you, the real you, you're right in a voice going, don't fucking do that, you know what'll happen. And that war, that is going on. This technique enables you to separate yourself from your addiction, and it saved me completely, because I could, once I learned the tools, it was like I could hear it all the time. It would talk to me negatively about my recovery. You're going to be boring. You know, what about when the girls won't be able to do that anymore? To keep me down, so I'd go, yeah, well, you know what, if you do that, and you can't be expected to not drink. And I had understood that once I had started to recognise my addiction through AVRT, addictive voice recognition technique, fuck me, I could see it, I could hear it all the time. Well, it'd give me an opponent, because at last, I could figure out why, when I'm using Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, losing everything I love, crying my eyes out Tuesday, Wednesday, begging me missus to take me back, trying to fix all the shit I'd caused over 4 days. Why when Friday, when I feel a little bit better, and Saturday comes, why am I getting thoughts of using again when I fucking know I don't want to? That was why.
We talk about something called Recovery 2.0 as well, which is there's a great guy called Tommy Rosen who elaborated on quite dated methods already of recovery, and to that he added nutrition, he added yoga, meditation. You know, my experience was what helped me and totally changed everything for me was a combination. So it was daily meditation, it was CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, it was group counselling sessions, it was connecting with other people again. This might sound crazy, but like, you know, pool volleyball with a bunch of people that I didn't really know changed everything for me. I came from being really isolated and not wanting to be around people to being okay with connecting with strangers again, and you know, so a combination of things to just get us back out there again and change it from isolation to connection. You know.
Sorry.
No, I was just say we can have a look at groups because it's a good resource. We have a company, Listen Up Therapy. Matthew does the therapy and I do the meditation, and we're not doing recovery groups. We're going to be doing some other kind of groups, but we can add that as a resource. Like we can have a look because you were wanting specific groups, weren't you? So I think that's worth looking into.
One thing that I found with my behaviour was that there were certain areas of life that I just wasn't connecting to. So why couldn't I just go out for a walk and enjoy it? What's the problem? Like why? So I worked really hard. I actually ended up getting a dog. But, you know, to go and connect with nature, because I'd never done it without being on drugs. Because I was abused when I was young. I had a really fucked up relationship with sex, you know, and intimacy. So I went on a tantrum retreat. You know, it's like, where are the areas of life that I'm not connecting to life, and not necessarily, you know, I did talking therapy because I wasn't talking to anyone. So it's almost like breaking it down and thinking about, why am I not connecting to that thing in life, and can I work on that? So not even being in a prescribed thing, you know, and maybe that's helpful.
And if you're talking about alternative therapies like plant medicines and stuff, there is a lot to be said for going on that journey with professionals in the right environment. I personally don't know anyone that's done an ayahuasca ceremony and hasn't gone back to taking drugs, but I'm sure they exist.
If you're looking for support groups as well in your local, we do them. We do a walk every Saturday around the park. There's guys in here in this group now sitting in the audience that are getting amazing rewards in this group now. We do Wednesday meetings in Liverpool city centre, which is, so if you ever want to come and learn and just sit and listen, just let me know.
So I think I've got a question here. So I've suffered with anxiety and depression bad.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit?
I've suffered with anxiety and depression bad, and it mightn't be for everyone, but one thing what changed the game for me was getting ice baths, breathing exercises, meditation, exercising every day. That kind of stuff helps. But I'd definitely look into ice baths because that changed the game for me, for sure.
I've seen a few of the lads getting them, a few of the boxers that I'm following them ice baths, and I've always fancied trying it, you know, and I think it must be a bit of a scaredy cat. Are they good? Honest, where'd you go for them?
Like, you'll feel like depressed and down, and then you know you've got to torture yourself in that ice bath, get your breathing going, and then next minute you're coming out going, woohoo! Like, I'm ready for everything. When you don't even want to go out, you're thinking, oh, I can't be arsed seeing people, I don't want to go out, I'm a bit nervous and this and that. Jump on an ice bath and you're like, fresh, ready.
Yeah, man, I like it.
I can't recommend it enough.
I seen Mark on a mission on his pages doing them, lots of people, one of the lads to follow, yeah.
Where can we sign up for that?
Run a cold bath and just put loads of ice in, get
Good idea.
it, and just scream.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up unless there's any burning desires for a quick last question. Time for one more.
Got a mic?
I've never suffered like any form of addiction, but what I've been finding, similar to obviously what you were saying with like the pre-set nerves, things like that, I kind of just like also really love a beer, like kind of that mentality. But what you were saying, Lee, is like when it turns into the second pint, the third pint, the fourth, it's kind of like maybe, I don't know if that's a youth thing, they've only been in my early 20s, but the one thing that I'm trying to sort of get a control of is actually, let's have fun, but let's just understand our limits, because we've all been in that situation where I wake up the next day and you go, just keep pretending you're alright, you didn't take it too far, and I'll meet with everyone the next day and be like, no, I'm fine. When in reality, tired, haven't probably eaten properly, slept less, because I just decided to go to the next bar and the next bar. And I think understanding that off switch, like when to go, do you know what, call it a day, that's something that I have struggled with. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Finding that middle ground was something I could never do. When you have an addiction like I had, unfortunately that off switch wasn't there. It was all or nothing for me. As soon as I picked my first drink up, that would lead me to sitting up for 3 or 4 days using cocaine and drinking anything I could get my hands on. Straight vodka, lying, hiding, saying I was going to the shops for milk, stashing vodka down my pants and cocaine in my pocket, coming home, and all these manipulative lying ways that were just stripping me of everything. So for me, there was no switch. I tried to find it for a very, very long time, but that was my addiction convincing me that I could find it when I couldn't. It would convince me that it was there for me, and so I would endlessly try and find it, and all it was doing was tricking me to drink again, so I ended up on a 3-day bender all the time. And that's addiction for you, but I don't know where your benders end, whether you're being brutally honest with us, and it is just feeling tired and down the next day because you went a little bit too far, or where you are really going too far, and deep down you know you are. As Matt said, you know, what we shouldn't be up here is judging people for going out and having a fucking good time and having a few drinks. That's not what we're saying. We're not. I say that to people. People sometimes have a pop at me saying, "Oh, you were high and mighty there," saying that, you know, you used to be a lunatic here. I remember you were here and there in the 051 and this and that nightclub. You were trashed the next day, and stay to you then, and here you are on here telling me that I can't drink. No, I'm not. That's not the message.
For me, I mean, if it's anything that I experienced that time when I decided to do that year, because I kind of got to a point where I felt like I had stuff under control, but I wanted to not do anything for an extended period simply because it had always been. So I'd got through my extreme and I was starting to be more moderate, but that year gave me a reset. So when I came back to it, you know, the idea that I was going out and I might not drink tonight, I probably won't, I'm not going out for that, or I've got important stuff going on but I want to go and see that gig, not going to drink, you know, but having that year was really helpful for me. And then I could be really honest when I came back to it and go, I'm definitely am just going out because I want to go out for that. I'm not going for booze or drugs or anything. So yeah, maybe that might be helpful to an extended period.
Yeah, I think you just need to ask yourself this: is what I'm doing affecting my goals, my physical health, my mental health, or my relationships? If it isn't, then don't worry about it. We're going to have to finish now, but thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks
Thanks everyone. Thanks guys. Thank you.